In this final section, we will be looking at how to integrate our newly created web components with the most popular front-end library and frameworks out there. So let's begin this section by getting a glimpse of the most popular front-end library in the world at this moment, React.js. React is a library created by Facebook Incorporation. In their words, it's a JavaScript library for creating user interface. But beneath the hood, React boasts of some unbelievable features, which is the reason why nearly 69.4 users on Stack Overflow voted React as their preferred library for front-end framework. So let's have a quick look at the features of React. Firstly, it's the virtual DOM. It's very similar to the Shadow DOM, but on a very advanced feature. 2. Declarative programming. Every code that you write is in a way declaring what you write. 3. There's a very strong community and fans of React.js, which is why anytime you try to code or anytime you get stuck in a piece of code, there's always someone there to help you. And finally, component reusability, which is the main reason why React.js is so popular with every front-end web developer out there. Let's have a quick look at the React application that we had seen earlier at the beginning of this session. So this was the application that was created using React. Let's quickly jump on to the code of this application. So as you can see, in a React application, there are the most primary unit of the entire application are components. Now, components can be defined in two ways. Either they can be defined using a class or they can be defined using a function. The ones that are defined using class are called stateful components because they have an individual state inside the component, while the ones without state are the functional components or the stateless components because you cannot add state here. Another important feature of React components is the passing of props. So whenever you define a React component like this, similar to how we have attribute passing in web components, React also passes attributes in their React components, but these are now called as props. So inside the navbar component, the attribute title with this particular text is now received as props, which is then used to populate the div, thereby creating the structure here. So if we have to compare it with our web component, you will see a lot of similarities. So whereas in our web components, we had to define a custom function called render, which was an extension of the connected callback function, React components on their own by default a mandatory compulsory render function which returns HTML in the form of JSX. It is a very similar syntax of HTML, but this is something that we need not learn at this moment. So this is how a React component is created. Another thing that you might have noticed is that we have a few lifecycle methods in our web component, but none of them are visible in this React component as of now. But of course, React components also have their own lifecycle methods, which are more and possibly with more features than our standard web components. Of course, the most important part of any React application is React component is the state, which is something which we don't clearly have in our web components. So in a way, if we look at a React application and a web component, we need not add the shadow DOM which we use to create in our web component because by default, React has its own format of a virtual DOM by default installed in every component. Additionally, React also has a custom name defined for each of the components, something which we also do in our web components. And of course, we need not look for observed attributes inside a React component. So in a way, a React component and a web component are very similar in structure, but they have their own pros and cons. So the question comes down to who wins in the battle between React and web components? And the answer is both. Both React.js and web components solve different problems. Web components were created for encapsulation, safe environment of reusable components, which is the reason why we have Shadow DOM and a lot of encapsulation helping our components stay safe from the outside world. However, in React, it provides a declarative library which relies on creating components quickly and in sync with data. So that's the reason why we can use both React, JS and web components in tandem together to create a even better web application.